Hello, it's Amy. It certainly is a warm one here today, but I am surviving the heat, and I'm here to bring you some more of the Journal of Emily Shore. And I think the plan is to finish off chapter 1 here. So just a quick refresher. Chapter 1 is the time period from when she was 11 and a half to 12 years old, stretching between July 5th and December 30th of 1831. And we've already, in the previous video, read the entries for July 5th and 6th, and we are now on the entry for July 7th. None of us have ever seen the sea before, and therefore I, at least, was much delighted with it. It is a great pleasure to me to sit on the sands and watch the boats coming out of the harbor, or entering it, especially if the sea be rougher than usual. I think it is also extremely amusing to watch a wave rolling on, gradually increasing in bulk, and at last breaking into foam. The surf of a large wave often runs a great way up the sands, and wets those who are not on their guard. I was once taken by surprise, and found myself suddenly up to the instep in seawater. A great deal of seaweed is to be found here. One sort is of a shining red-brown, or a little like damson color. It is shaped like a long strap of leather, the consistence of which is also leathery. Another grows like a plant on rocks. Its peculiarity is that the leaves are covered with a singular kind of ball inflated with air, which when broken snaps with a hollow noise. Another sort has similar extrances, but which are oval and juicy and of a jelly-like substance. A third sort is of nothing but a multitude of long, fine red hairs, unbranched and growing from the same root altogether. An extremely beautiful species looks like a collection of small pink ribbons. This, if I remember right, is a little branched. Some of the hair-like kinds are branched, and there are some which are composed of jointed tubes. And I'm noticing at the bottom of the previous page, we have a little asterisk that just notes that the beginning of the journal, which I read out in the previous video, though written at the date given, was copied out down to the end of August and some months afterwards in the passage above, as well as the explanatory opening added. And so it does confirm my suspicions that the explanatory opening from the previous video was something that she added previously, not previously, that she added after the fact. And what we are reading now, so the July 7th that I just read, was written at the time, but she copied it out, she rewrote it into probably a new notebook later on. And we're definitely seeing, that naturalist, almost biologist perspective that we were told to expect in the introduction to this journal. She definitely was a very curious 11-year-old, and it's very interesting and precocious that she would take the time to note the difference between all these types of seaweed, and then to write down these descriptions in her journal, as though she's compiling something for a scientific thesis. But on to July 8th. I think there are a good many flowers about Broadstairs, which is particularly interesting to me, as I am very fond of botany. Though I have looked in vain for samphire and erigno, which grow near the sea, yet the wild mignoyet, which I never saw before, is plentiful on the rocks, as well as another flower called the little brometic. It is a papilionaceous flower of a yellow color and unbranched. The flowers grow in a large woolly tuft on the top of the stalk. The yellow toad's flax also is to be found, and I once saw on the rock a splendid scabious of a rich crimson-purple color, which is often seen in gardens and has a strong, sweet scent. Lastly, a sort of red valerian, a very pretty flower, grows on the cliffs. And so there we have it, an interest in botany and flowers. July 12th. Ramsgate is a large and rather handsome town with a noble harbour and a great deal of shipping. The harbour is formed by 3 magnificent stone piers, the finest in the kingdom. The inner harbour is only formed for the reception of boats and small brigs. It is entered by an iron bridge in the cross pier, which lifts up. July 19th. The starfish is also very common. This singular zoophyte is in the shape of a star. It is of pink or purple color, and each spike is covered with thousands of minute points, by means of which the creature moves. August 8th. In the evening, we all had a nice row on the sea. We saw on the water some crab nets, which are made of nets stretched over sticks, so as to form a place big enough for a large crab. The entrance is so contrived that it cannot get out again. These traps are fastened at certain distances on a long line which floats in the water. We saw several crabs already caught in some of these nets. The tide rose particularly high today. August 11th. Near Calais, Papa and Mamma observed a remarkable phenomenon. A large space of ground at some distance from the sea, as much as 2 miles indeed, is entirely composed of a bed of round pebbles, whose depth is said to be interminable. It is not that the ground is stony, but there is nothing to be seen except pebbles. Query: is it possible that the sea has in ancient times retired and left these stones behind? August 31st. In the morning, Mamma took Arabella and me to Burgess's library to see the printing, which interested us extremely. The types are small, wedge-shaped pieces of metal, at the end of which is a letter in relief. They are of a great many different sizes. On tables are raised things resembling very large desks, all covered with little wooden compartments in which the different letters are kept. They are not arranged alphabetically, but according as they are most wanted. The man who lays the types stands before this table and takes out one after another all the letters he wants. He fixes each, as he takes it up, in something called a composing stick, which he holds in his left hand, and which is made of brass and wood. It resembles a little case or box without a top, and with only 3 sides. When the case is filled, the types are laid out correctly on another desk, without compartments, and when the sheet is completed, they are transferred to the press. The press is a small table with an edge round the top of it, with brass lines to separate the pages or columns. A frame is fastened to it on hinges. This frame is as big as the table and has a cloth back. It is made to contain the paper. The little table is attached to the machine part of the press. The types are arranged in order on the table, and the printer goes to another near it, covered with a particular sort of stiff ink. He then takes a roller, composed of glue, isinglass, and other elastic materials. This he rolls over the ink, and when it is thoroughly inked, passes it in like manner over the types. The sheet of paper is then fastened into the before-mentioned frame, which is immediately laid down on the type table, and thus brings down the paper on the inked type. The table is next rolled under the press, which is screwed down on it, and it is then rolled back and the sheet taken out. And just some sirens. September 16th. Gallamgay Heath is famous throughout England for the Gallamgay Heath, that makes more sense. Gallamgay Heath is famous throughout England for the rare flowers to be found there. I wish we lived nearer to it. Amongst the prettiest flowers I have found on it, at least at this time of the year, are the Euphrasia officinalis, or eyebright, and the Polygala vulgaris, or milkwort. The eyebright is a purplish white with a dark purple streak and 2 yellow spots on the lip of the corolla. It is of the class of rigidate flowers. The whole plant is small and delicate. The milkwort is also a small, slender plant. It grows in little clumps and does not rise above 3 or 4 inches in height. The stalk is purplish red, the leaves small and oval. The blossom varies considerably in color, being sometimes blue, sometimes pink, and sometimes white. Of these, I think I prefer the blue. The Erica tetralix, or cross-leaved heath, grows here in great abundance. It is bell-shaped and of a beautiful pink. October 21st. In the morning, Papa took us all to see certain interesting operations in glass, performed by a man who travels about, and who has come to Potton to exhibit for a day or two. He made in glass baskets, candlesticks, birds, horses, etc., etc. The way he did them was as follows. He sat at a table, and before him was a little furnace which contained a flame of intense heat, though it was only kept up by tallow. He had a great many glass sticks of various sizes and of every color. When he wished to make anything, a basket for instance, he took a small one which he merely used as a prop. He held the end of it, and we have another asterisk here pointing to a note. Here is an evident clerical error. It should be he held another in the flame, etc. He held the end of it in the flame till the end of it melted into a sort of paste, which could be drawn out into any fineness. It was then drawn round and round the first stick, so as to make the bottom of the basket horizontally on the stick. In this way he made a vast number of things. One was Charles II in the oak, another the Lord Mayor's coach, George the Fourth, lying in state, etc. Some of these were very handsome and expensive. We bought a few of the minor things. One was a small glass pen, and there was also an elegant and beautiful little ship. October 31st. Another pupil arrived last night, Mr. Charles Howard, the fifth son of the Earl of Carlisle. He is a tall, fine young man, and I like him a good deal from what I have since seen of him. I believe he is clever, and he is certainly very fond of books, especially of poetry. But his ruling passion is a love of politics, even from the time when he was quite a child. He is a great Whig, Foxite, and Reformer, and always reads the debates in Parliament. The newspaper is his inseparable companion. Wherever he goes, and whatever he does, even at meals, indeed, he is so employed with it at breakfast that Mr. Gower, who is his cousin, Lady Carlisle, and Lady Granville being sisters, is often obliged to give him a little kick under the table to remind him that he must eat his breakfast. November 4th, Friday. I had forgot to mention in the proper place that after I came home from Ramsgate, I made a pasteboard model of the steam packet in which we went to Broadstairs. It is nearly a yard long. I finished it a few weeks ago. It cost me a good deal of money, for I had to buy pasteboard and coarse paints and powder. I made it very correct and furnished and painted all the cabins, even to the staircases. I also rigged it and put the rudder and boat to it, with the paddles, seats, railings, and flags. November 10th, Thursday. Some time ago there was an exhibition of paintings and engravings at Potton. Many of the latter were very good. Amongst those I remember best was a very pretty engraving of a cottage girl and her little dog from a painting by Gainsborough. But those I liked most were some excellent etchings from Moreland and two very beautiful proofs in mezzotint from the same artist. Papa was so much pleased with these that he bought them at a low price. Moreland particularly excels in figures, especially in children, but most of all in pigs, which animals he was very fond of, and used to make pets of them. The two proofs were Blindman's Buff and Bird's Nesting. I think the former is my favorite. The children are admirably represented, especially one little girl holding a dog in her arms. The dog is perhaps the best of the two. The expression of his eyes and his whole air are so very natural. Moreland rather fails in his trees, and the shading of his barns and sheds is sometimes a large, unmeaningless mass of heavy strokes. November 11th. For some little time, Louisa has complained of pain in her hip when she walks, and today Mamma consulted Mr. McGarth about her. Mr. McGarth confessed that all we had for to do was to put on a blister, which we accordingly applied to her hip, and she was of course obliged to keep in bed. Blisters are made of the Spanish fly, or cantharcids, which is a small insect whose color is very beautiful, green, gold, and azure. It is a native of the south of Europe. Their smell is like that of mice. They feed on the leaves of shrubs, especially of ash trees. Their eggs are deposited deep in the ground, where also the larvae are metamorphosed into perfect insects. The odorous particles emitted by the cantharids often occasion sleep to those who sit under trees on which swarms of them are collected. When dried, 50 of them weigh hardly a drachm, and they are used as blisters in a powdered state. And that is, interesting, peculiar. I wonder if it actually did anything. That's certainly not a remedy that we have been using today. November 17th. It is not perhaps generally known that all kinds of plants have their particular moth or butterfly, and that which feeds on one could not feed on another. Moths may be distinguished from butterflies by the shape of their feelers, all which have caveated feelers, that is, feelers that are of an equal thickness throughout, with a large head at the end, and all which have feelers that grow gradually bigger from the root to the extremity, and have a sort of tuft composed of several threads at the terminating point. Those are butterflies. Well, those which have feelers in any way different are moths. These latter are more numerous than butterflies are. December 24th, Saturday. I have long been employed in writing a history of the Jews, which, down to the return from the captivity, is taken from the Bible, but after that it is much abridged from Milman's history. I have illustrated it with several drawings. It is of the size of half a sheet of writing paper doubled once. It has more than 200 pages and is in the printing character. Moreover, it has a frontispiece, title page, vignette, preface, table of contents, and index, to say nothing of an introduction, conclusion, and a poem at the end. It is an inch in thickness and has a cover of fine blue pasteboard, glued on and decorated with several patterns. And that is very impressive for a 12-year-old. And that brings us to the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 is February 16th to December 30th of 1832, from the ages of 12 to 13 years old. And I will be back again to begin on chapter 2.